Broad Street. Broad Street, situated in Lagos Island, is steeped in Nigerian history. Once the biggest financial hub of the country, it housed the headquarters of major banks, linked to CBN, the stock exchange, and the loads of lender companies. Broad Street is a historically significant street. It has played a central role in the development of Lagos and history, an important commercial and administrative center for the British colonial authorities. It was also a home to some of the city's earliest modern buildings. Broad Street was a residential area in the pre-colonial era. With the British came the Methodist Boys High School in 1878 and the Broad Street Prison in 1882, renamed Freedom Park. The General Hospital, which was a British military hospital, was built in 1893, being the first general hospital in Nigeria. The old British Secretariat building, which is now the Federal Ministry of Justice, was built in 1906. Broad Street has seen a full turn into modern commercial office blocks, complexes, skyscrapers, and markets from the Outer Marina through Akpombo, early into the Adeniji Adele Road. Broad Street is one of the busiest streets in Nigeria on weekdays, where commercial activities take place day and night. From modern buildings to ancient structures, this street gives one a raw dose of life in Lagos. Broad Street is often referred to as Lagos Financial District. It boasts a mix of architectural styles, reflecting its long history, colonial-era buildings, Victorian and Edwardian architectural features, alongside more modern skyscrapers and structures. Broad Street remains a vital, vibrant part of the Nigerian economy. Broad Street. SOUQ Enlightenment.
Hello and welcome to SOUQ Pulse. It's your program again, and we are here to talk, discuss. We'll sit and we'll look at issues that is as it affects us, as it affects you, as it affects the country where you are from, as it affects the facilities where your country has taken loan from, or where your country wish to do trade or transact some fun business. It's still SOUQ Pulse, where we look at development agencies, be them multilateral, your own country's agencies. We look at those monies that are moving. We look at the businesses that are being transacted. We ask questions, who is benefiting? We ask questions, how our family is part of these particular businesses and how is it upgrading their standard of living? We look at loans that have been taken by countries, given to countries with things we might not be able to explain. I will ask those very important questions. Are they really what they are meant for? Are the countries really taking those loans for the betterment of their own people? It's SOUQ Pulse. We don't stop asking questions. We don't stop looking. We don't stop talking. We don't stop discussing. And it's not just us on this divide. That's why we tell you, go on our social media handles and join the conversation. And when you see things happening around you, let us talk. My name is Chuks, John-Rogers Chuks, and I'm also blessed to have in the studio today our own very Mr. Sam. You're welcome to the show, sir.
Good evening, Chuks. A pleasure to be here.
Yes, thank you very much. So today on SOUQ Pulse, we are looking at, it's not a new trend, but it's something that has caught up over time. It started in ways that were not well explained, and with time people have come to put their interest into it. Nations are talking about it, both those that are taking, those that are not taking, those that we are not really sure why they are even getting into it, but everybody is talking about it. Now, for those that are part of it, is it profitable? What are we looking at? We're looking at natural resource backed loans in Africa. Who exactly is benefiting? If you don't understand it, let me take it again. Now, resources are being used as either collateral or direct payment for loans that are being taken from either organizations or other countries. And with time, whether they like it or not, somebody somewhere has to pay. So that is what they are called, resource-backed loans. And the major places where these are being taken is Africa and Latin America. These are two major nations, two major sides of the continent where these loans are going to. Now we are going to x-ray this both divides. These loans that have been taken well over a period of over 20 years, of what use? Has it made those society better? Or is the giver having an ulterior motive and is just there to make his own society better? But whether we like it or not, like we always say on this particular program, it is a race. We must run because those ahead of us are still running. They are not slowing down. Sir, you're welcome to the program today. So let us start this particular discussion in a very calm, nice way. Venezuela has taken these loans for well over 20 years and they've backed it up with their oil. In the last 7 years, they've had serious crisis, from not just election crisis, economic crisis. And right now they are looking for, okay, how can we get ourselves out of this mess? So if we take that particular Latin American country that has decided to take loans using their natural resource as a backup, as a way of payment, as a collateral, if that happens to be an example, will you advise another person to start?
It's a difficult question and very tricky, but I was just trying to make an attempt to provide some imperative so that we can answer the question appropriately. Whether resource-backed concession loans are beneficiary to the host country, in my view, to a very large extent, if the terms of those agreements are well respected, I think to a very large extent, it will be beneficial because they equally have tenor. So it's not a life wire that those loans, those concession loans are tied to. So a particular loan can be tied to a natural resource of a particular country for a particular period of time. But the question we should be addressing is that when those specific countries take these concession loans, as they are called, to what extent are those contracts or those agreements respected by the host country? Are they under the table transactions that favor leadership of this country? To what extent do people do due diligence with the countries of origin that give those concessions host country? In my view, these are the conversations that can provide adequate answers to the topic under discourse, in my view.
Okay, good. I like your view. In your view, there is no better way of starting than starting the quarrel. Now, let's go back to some statistics on this particular resource-based loans. Now, we get to see a lot of feedback, lot of fightback, majorly from the West on this particular issue. Now, from the research, from what we see that over 60% of this particular loans for Africa, specifically for Africa, is coming from China. Now, we see IMF is against it. We are not going to merit and demerit yet. We're just looking at where a lot of the drawback is coming from. IMF is against it. Our own African Development Bank is also against it. Several institutions from the West are all against it. All the media from the West are all against it. Now, they are not just going against the practice or this particular way of picking up the loan, but they are going against the giver of the loan in the first place. Now, I get to ask, is this about this loan? Are they talking, are they commenting, or are they coming after the loan because they think the loan is not good, or because they think it's China that is involved?
Thank you very much. I think that's a good entry point for this discussion. Essentially, the the West has been involved in what you call international propaganda. Anything that does not come from the West seems not the right thing to do. And if you look at it, particularly from the growing influence of China in the world, China has overtaken America, whether you like it or not. So the West have been involved in what you call international propaganda. Anything that comes from China, Japan, other Asian countries are not good to go. So from that perspective, you can see that the Bretton Woods institutions, which are essentially neoliberal institutions that came up after the Second World War, has always championed this cause. But if you look at some of these concession loans vis-a-vis the level of relationship, even from the colonial time to the present day, the level of investment that the West has made in some of these host countries is nothing to write home about. But on the other hand, in spite of the criticism of this natural resource-backed concession loan, Russia seems to have made some critical milestones where they have made such investment, particularly with the Roads and Belts Initiative, which is one of the major policy dimension, foreign policy dimension of China, particularly in Africa. You can see those massive investments that are on ground, even though they are backed by natural resource endowment. You can see this physical development elements in those countries. But the West is always mounting their development paradigm, particularly in Africa, from the perspective of this colonial mind that whatever that doesn't come from the West is not a sustainable development for Africa in particular. I personally don't share in those sentiments and view. So if you see it from this breadth of thinking, I think these resource-backed concession loans are not really bad once the host countries respect the terms of agreement and those actual development comes to these countries.
Okay. Now, we are still going to dwell a bit on this side of this question before we now start looking at the loans themselves and who is giving, who is taking. Now, let's take an example of our next door neighbor, West Africa, Niger. Niger has a huge deposit of uranium. And for a very long time, France have tapped into that uranium. And they've paid not 10% of what they are taking. Not just them, their neighbors too have paid less than 10% of the worth of the uranium they are taking from Niger until the present political issue, on past there, and things are beginning to change. Will you say if Niger decide to say, okay, good, we are going to swipe our uranium to, for example, Japan for 50% the worth, instead of letting the West have it for less than 10%, will you say that is worth it?
I think that's one of the issues that we just expressed earlier. The policy of assimilation, which is the French system colonial government, you saw that the relationship between France and the colonies, they took advantage of those colonies in terms of their financial institutions, their mineral resource. And the case in point that you just mentioned is one of the undesirable relationships that existed between France and Niger for a very long time. So if you make a comparison to a country who will take those minerals and make some development effort within Niger, back up with some level of resource, I think in my mind that would be better than somebody who have an agreement in their colonial relationship that would undermine your own development and say, well, for whatever you produce, you don't get up to 10%. I think that is savagery, in my view.
Okay. Your choice of words, that to be savagery. That's okay, good. Now, let's now look at it from our own side. Shorten our mind, said resources can be tapped, mined, drilled, in whatever form, harnessed, and sold to whoever wants it. And on the other hand, we now have to take a loan for a resource that we've not even brought out of the ground yet. And taking this particular loan, we know that selling it is worth more than taking the loan. Are we not mortgaging the future?
Yes, you may say they are mortgaging the future. If you refuse to develop yourself, to what extent can you compete in the international market?
What about me? What about us or Africa or what each of the countries selling it?
No, that's the point I'm trying to
make.
Find
a market and sell it.
Where are the markets? Where is the technology to develop those items? So if you want to compete favorably, you must find a way to improve on your technology so that you can do your exploitation, you mine your raw materials rather than exporting them as raw commodity. But and that's one of the major challenges. No, just a minute. The configuration of the international architecture is a major challenge. So if the West and the East continually take advantage of Africa and other countries within the global South, this will continue. So to what extent can we invest on our human resource so that we can even process our primary commodities, whether they are natural resource based, so that we can exploit them, process them, so that we can sell them to the international market. So these are the nexus between international conspiracy and the ability to develop your natural resource. So the option, rather than staying out of development, is better to win some rather than losing everything. So if, for example, you don't have the capacity to exploit some of those materials and people are ready to take those materials from your country, and therefore they are willing to pay you some money upfront because you don't have the skill set and the capability and capacity to mine those, to exploit those minerals to your own advantage. So where do we stand?
Is it that we don't have or we have refused to do it? Those are two different things.
That's what I spoke about earlier. The international architecture, the way it is made up, is making us to be dependent on the West and the East. The West, through a neo-colonial mechanism, has kept us down for a very long time. The East, as particularly China, is saying, okay, sorry, we're not involved in the earlier partition and colonialism that took place in Africa, but we have some initiative that we can use to collaborate, to partner. Give us your primary commodity.
Do you call this collaboration and partnership? Or
to a very large extent. To a very large extent. It's a collaboration. Because if you give a resource, a particular resource, we do X, Y, Z for you. So what I think that African government, particularly developing countries, can do is to say, okay, we'll give you X amount of our resource for a certain number of time, but for us to sustain this relationship, build refineries that can mine, if it's petroleum products, if it's gold, if it's columbite, if it's other natural resource that those countries are endowed with, so that they can have a comparative advantage and they're able to sell, particularly to the East, or have a policy regime. Some countries have those policies. Do this primary commodity to some level of production before you take them out, rather than taking them as raw materials that does not have value addition to the country or to the host country.
Okay. Now, you are talking from a perspective of all things being equal. You are talking from a perspective of a good agreement, something that is visible.
No, all things cannot be equal.
I'm looking at
that jargon has changed.
I'm looking at
other things being equal.
Okay, other things being equal.
Yes.
Good. And both parties agreeing and making sure that, okay, this is what we agreed to do. Now, what in this case? Let's look at what over time what has happened against what should happen. Now, since 2004 to 2018, there has been this collation of studies, and well over 168 billion has been spent, given as loan for this particular resource-backed loans. And I'm more interested in the African countries aside the Latin American countries. Now, for Angola, Chad, Republic of Congo, South Sudan, these countries are the major beneficiaries of this particular kind of loan in Africa. Now, if we look at their economies and compare them to other countries within their own belt, within that same Africa, they are doing badly. That now begs us to ask, through this period, what has happened to the loans that you took?
Okay, two ways to answer your question. Number one, who is providing this data? Who is sponsoring this data? Where are these data coming from? Who has benchmarked this data? Who has done due diligence on this data? So that's
part one.
That's on the one side. On the other hand, what is the leadership profile of these African countries that have taken this concession loan? To what extent that these concession loans benefited those particular countries without the leadership through corrupt mechanism?
Okay, can I pause you? Now, this is where I was waiting for you to come. Now, let's take these countries again, one after the other. Angola has had a dictatorship for a very long time. Chad has been in disarray for a very long time. South Sudan is still recovering from their issues. They are still, as we speak. Then we know Congo. Now, this now begs me to ask, when China and other Asian countries were giving these loans, did they not see the crisis in these places?
There are studies and works of international scholars that speaks to the nexus between natural resource endowment and conflict in Africa. So the West, from studies, if we want to buy into your research methodology that you just rolled out, the West has equally been accused of sponsoring conflict in resource.
I'm not accusing China right now.
No. I'm not saying no. I'm trying to underscore.
A lot of these crises were there before these loans even came.
I'm trying to underscore the challenge.
Okay.
Because the question or the topic under discourse is natural resource-backed loans. I like to add our word concession loan, because those loans are not real loans. They are concessionary, based on some that, okay, if I give you loan, I'll be involved in the development, I'll bring more power, manpower, I bring resource.
Some of them are not, you can't really find it written down somewhere. You can't
they are written. They are written down.
Okay.
But again, when you talk about international conspiracy,
okay, that
I mentioned earlier, some of these concession loans are painted in a way that those contractual agreements that even the African country that just take those loans don't even look through the documentation, they just sign them off. To a very large extent, that is not true. That's conspiracy on the one hand. The particular projects, concession projects, in some of these countries, you can see them physically. Compare to the Bretton Woods institutions who just give those loans, and at the end of the day, same Bretton Woods institutions, in connivance with the government of these countries, use those money in drinking tea, in conference rooms, and these have been documented by officials that work.
Is tea that expensive?
No. What that means is a metaphor.
I get you, sir.
For the money that does not trickle down for redevelopment.
Okay.
And this has been documented by people that worked in the World Bank. There's a book that you call Globalization and Its Discontent that was written by Joseph Singh, former economic advisor to Clinton, who had worked in the World Bank. And he said most of the policy regime that they pursue there does not really favor the developing country. And there's another one that was written by another guy who worked in one of the Bretton Woods institutions called the Economic Hitman. okay, which says that more often than not, some of these things, the package from the West, are not really in the interest of the developing country. So if you see China, on the other hand, who comes in with some elements of concession loan to develop infrastructure, and to a very large extent, you can see the physical infrastructure and the level of development that has taken place in those countries.
Irrespective of the cost?
No, just a moment. Irrespective of those conspiracy. I'm not saying
not
that.
The
no,
cost.
Just a moment, Chris. Chuks. The point I'm making is that take note of international conspiracy on the one hand. Take note of those concession loans. I'm not saying whether these concession loans actually meet the requirement of the host countries that take this loan. We can rework those things. We can look at the books and see to what extent whether this concession loan match with the level of development. So if we are going in that direction, if the narrative is in that direction, then that conspiracy will subside to a very large extent. And if you see the Road and Belt Initiative of China across Africa, even though where there were issues of sovereignty versus China concession loan in some country, some of those concession loan has been renegotiated. They provide employment. You can see the fixed infrastructure. And you, even in Lagos recently, the governor of Lagos State just went to China to see how he can conclude some arrangement to develop some of those rail lines. So, to a very large extent, you have the physical infrastructure, unlike the West, that give these loans, and we don't really see the level of development. This is debatable. This is contentious, but then I think I prefer to align with something I can see than something that leave conference rooms to government house and it doesn't trickle down. And one of the major imperatives in development is that if things all trickle down, then they should be bottom up so that the people can benefit in the final analysis.
Okay. Now, let's go one more round on this before now start thinking of the break. Let's look at it from this angle. We are not holding brief for China, and never will we hold brief for the West. We are talking about business in Africa, economies in Africa, how they thrive. Now, we've seen this. China concession loan, am I using the word concession just like?
That's the way it's used, concession, because they are not normal commercial loans.
Okay. But I think I'll still go back to my natural resource-backed loans.
No problem.
Okay. Now, we have seen an issue where country A does a rail line for a specific amount of money, and country B does 10% of that same rail line with 10 times the amount of money country A using doing that thing. And they both contracts or both loans came from China. At what point in time, or how can we say that the loan givers, this is not Chinese government, how can we say that the loan giver, because they are private banks, whether they are government approved or not government approved, at what point can we say that these banks can hold who they are giving these loans to responsible when it comes to corruption on their end?
Do you say development loan, or you're talking about commercial loan? I need to some clarity so that I can speak to the issue in specific terms.
Resource-backed loans.
Okay, resource-backed loans are essentially government backup loans for development. So the issue of corruption cannot be ruled out from the way things are done in the developing country. But in specific terms, there are issues when it comes to procurement. There are standardized ways of pricing. Once those thresholds in terms of pricing for procurement purposes meet international best practices in terms of
well, we say international best practices when me and you know that no matter what we write on the paper and call it international best practices.
No, what I mean by international best practices, there are minimum thresholds in terms of procurement, in terms of pricing for specific projects. But then, like in management, people pay for the effort. So
whose effort exactly are we paying?
No, effort in terms of when you get in the loan gets to a particular country, people have to pay an interest, even though it's concessional in terms of what is charged as an interest. So when you look at the percentage, then you'll be able to know what are the minimum thresholds. So, for example, if you are going to tie a kilometer of a road, or a road is going to pass through Port Harcourt, which is a riverine area, it's not the same that you use to construct the place that is upland. So those differentials are what we call international best practices. So once those minimum thresholds are not sustained, then the issue of corruption become a major challenge. So the point I'm trying to underscore here is that yes, there are corruption. Yes, there are some of these concession loans.
Resource-backed loans.
Yeah, resource-backed loan.
Okay.
I already understand the purview of discussion. So sometime I'll just use that word because we're already on the subject matter. So the point is, this natural resource back loan, there are equally international best practices in terms of pricing, in terms of the requirement. So the borrowing countries and the lending countries must come to the round table and look at the minimum threshold in terms of pricing and agree and look at to what extent can this concession and these development projects survive for 20, 30, 40 years as the case may be.
Okay. On this particular note, please hold on to your thought. We will go on a break and SOUQ Pulse will be right back. Wherever you are, just start looking around your environment and start asking those questions. What particular resource in my community or in my country have my leaders or your leaders used in taking a loan? And in our conversation channel, those particular places. Hey, let's get to talk. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Wise men. Iconic sculptures and statues adorn major metropolitan cities of the world. In Lagos, Nigeria, the statue of three men designed to depict the state's cultural heritage and to usher in visitors and tourists into the ever-accommodating center of excellence is no doubt an astounding work of art. Originally built under the administration of Colonel Raji Rasaki, designed by Bodu Shodende in 1991 and standing over 12 feet high, referred to as Agba Meta or Aro Meta, the three sculptured chiefs were placed along the Lagos-Ibadan toll gate to welcome people coming into Lagos State. The statue called the Three Wise Men by many has become a major signature for the state. Three white-capped chiefs clad in white wrappers knotted across their shoulders and with clenched right fists are shown in the artwork. The images fascinate and create impressions in the minds of visitors coming into the state, captivating the attention of visitors who look with keen interest, pondering on the messages which the posture of the engraved images signifies. The Three Wise Men has been relocated thrice from its original position at Ojodu Berger end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to Magodo area before its final relocation to its present site at Olowopopo Drive. The sculpture has suffered severe damages over the years and renovated. Bodu Shodende, through this sculpture, depicted the highest honor that can be afforded to anyone in the eco-greeting tradition. The Three Wise Men, Arometa, SOUQ Enlightenment.
Yes, welcome back from that short break. Hope you enjoyed the Arometa mini documentary. It's still SOUQ Pulse, and we are here looking at natural resources backed loans. Who exactly is benefiting, the receiver or the giver? And we've had a lot of backlash from those that are not benefiting, that thinks the giver has something in store. So, sir, Mr. Sam is still here with us. So let's head back to an African country, Guinea. In 2017, Guinea took a resource-backed loan of 20 billion. That is 200% of their gross domestic product in 2 years. Now I'm asking, yes, they had the resource to give for it. In good faith, which is not ever found in business, but in good faith, if you are a Guinean, will you tell your government to go ahead and take that sort of loan?
Yes, in one breath, yes. On the other breath is we have this mindset. Once reports are given, we just take it on the surface value. Who has done an independent finding to look at the deployment of those resource-based concession loans?
I agree with you.
No, just a moment.
I agree with you. The project was laudable. What the project was going to use for was laudable. But won't you ask, okay, please, let us break it down. Let's take 5 and take an hour later. Knowing the antecedent of the leadership in your side of the divide.
Yeah, that's the point I'm making. If leaders who take concession loans are not responsible to use those loans for the benefits of their citizens, then that's become questionable. So the point I was trying to make is that in the development sector, where people only talk about the input and the output, people don't look seriously into the outcome. And the outcome is very important. What is the impact? So if you look at it from input basis, resource deployed, this is the project, what is the quantitative and the qualitative outcome that these loans impart on citizens? Whether when the loans are converted to a very large extent into some form of those loans comes even in cash, to what extent do leadership of those countries actually use those loans for the benefit of the citizens? So we must interrogate the entire process. So
right now, me and you
will agree. If we don't do that, that's part of the
leadership part is 80%.
So it's like a continuum. So you don't look at one aspect and jump into a conclusion. And I think African leadership and citizens must be engaged in citizen diplomacy. High civil society organizations can backtrack some of this loan and see how they can measure the outcome. Citizens, on the other hand, must find a way to reach out to some of these documents and begin to appraise some of these projects from time to time, whether some of these concession loans that they are committed to by their leaders really impart them.
Okay, it's nice. Now, the Guinea issue was majorly bauxite mines, which Africa is also blessed with. Apart from this, taking these loans and backing them up and using your resource as collateral, sometimes do you consider that there can be an issue along the line? Not leadership issue, not implementation issue, but something can happen. Typical example, there was some years back we had crude oil crash. The markets crashed. I don't know if I'm making sense. So at that particular point in time, countries like Chad, Sudan, and Co had to now start looking for how to reschedule, call the guys back. Hey, this is what the issue is. You can see we can't pay. Even if we pay, we need more to also hold the economy down. So if we take all we can to give you, so they can pay up on this particular loan.
Or if you see from the irregular contract, there are 3 major elements in any contractual agreement. whether they are concession loan, whether they are commercial loan, whether normal contract in terms of employment contract. There are three major considerations: offer, acceptance, and consideration. These are the three major drivers of every contract arrangement. So the point here is that there's an offer for the given country.
Okay.
The receiving country has to accept. Then there are consideration. This consideration is what you are trying to speak to. So
now, this
for
consideration,
example,
who is he favoring?
No, whichever way. Once you drop a contract, there are certain conditions that are precedent to the drawdown of those loans. And those precedents are stated out ab initio from the point of view when that contract is negotiated. So if there are going to be vagaries of a pricing regime over a period of time, those things are factored into the loan. So the question that we should be asking, to what extent do our leaders look at the three elements of those contract or agreement that they sign with these countries that give these concession loans, whether they are resource backed or other kinds of concession loan that they give to the global south. So I don't always like to be involved in a discussion where the discourse is painted with one brush. So the point I'm making is that we must interrogate the full process when they go into the negotiation table. What are the things being offered? When you accept this loan, what are the due diligence undertaken by country? Do you have an independent consultant that look at some of these loans?
Is it more like, are you telling that to the government right now? If they have people that sat down having the interest of that country at heart to verify and scrutinize this thing to make sure that it's to their own credit?
No, but for citizen diplomacy, there's been a demand on government across the world.
Before the citizen gets there, the loan has been signed and taken.
Before you go into loan negotiation, people that are representing the majority of people should be part of those negotiations and see to what extent can this be beneficial to the common good of society.
Now you're looking at it from best practices, but is it what is obtainable?
Well, there's a clamor for that, and that people should be responsible. So the question should be asking: do we have a responsible leadership that go into the negotiation table with a view to signing loans that are beneficial, that the interest elements, certain percentage, don't go to some people for under the table transaction. Okay,
now let's look at our next door neighbor, Ghana. Ghana had, just some years down the line, Ghana had a hydropower, exactly this kind of resource-based hydropower construction. And it was from a company, not just a government, not the Chinese government. Now, they had issues along the line, and a whole lot of restructuring had to come in. Now, this begs the same question where you are almost there. At what point in time should we start holding who negotiates a loan responsible? If the citizens come in, at what point in time should you say, good, you did not negotiate this loan to the best interest of our nation? When should we start holding them responsible?
Well, the point is that you must take commercial transaction in its entirety. Whether they are government, people to people, government to government, government to private sector, and private sector to government. Financial transaction globally can go wrong. So it's not specific to natural resource endowment backed loan. The point here is that even when you go into a commercial transaction with the best of interest, certain policy regime may affect that. Pricing, there's a high level of inflation. So if you go into a forward contract deal some 10 years ago, there are vagaries in terms of pricing, in terms of the socioeconomic environment that may not be sustainable currently. So, and such issues are factored into the loan arrangement. So why not speaking for those agencies? When we speak to issues, we must equally look at the scenarios. Even sometimes, even when you do social borrowing, you want your friend to lend you some money based on some calculation, and that calculation does not come into fruition as envisaged. It can happen. And maybe you made a promise that within 1 week, you are going to return the money. I'm not trying to simplify it, I'm just trying to use it as an analogy to show that sometimes loans can go bad, no matter well-intentioned they are. So because you equally have risk factors. So what are the environmental risk factors? So to what extent are you able to block those leakages? I think that's what we should focus on in terms of the narrative that we should put forward to sustain, and if we get those loans, to what extent are those loans beneficial to the citizens?
Okay. To what extent are these loans, those loans, beneficial to the citizens? You will agree with me that as long as China is involved, they didn't come there to spread largesse. They came to do business. Yes, they are here to get the resources they want for their industries and at the same time compensate whoever is doing the giving. They didn't come there to just sit and dole out loans for doling out loans' sake. They want their money. If they're not getting their money back, they want a what for what they are giving you. Now, if they are that good, intentional, purposeful in making sure that their economy work by working hand in hand with the African economies, can we, on this other side, also now start looking at our leaders that are going to get into these conversations, into this agreement, into these signatures, and say, okay, we also trust our leaders to have our backs?
Yeah, the point, there are new governance issues at the national level. There are some countries that are practicing, and I think it's a recommendation that leaders, whatever borrowing they want to do, those borrowings should be tied to their term of office. Once you are not able to get things done within a specific time in office, then it becomes a major challenge. These are some of the governance issues that people are conversing for.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hold that laughter. I saw a particular loan agreement. I won't mention the country, but I know you know the loan agreement. And it was signed, and the particular person is spending 4 years, and that loan agreement is going to start yielding, supposed to start paying 8 years after the person has left government. Now, if African leaders sign and take this kind of loans, are they taking the loans for who to work for and who to pay? Are they going to be responsible? Does it look like the person wants to be responsible for that loan?
No, the clamor, I'm saying that based on some of the challenges that we have raised in this discussion and moving African forward, what are the lessons that we can learn from some of those gaps that existed with this concession loan? And I'm saying there's a call, even globally, that if countries want to borrow, they should borrow within the limit of their terms in office, so that people don't commit generations of other leaders who were not privy or may not be interested in some of those concession loans. So the point is that again will help in a way to sustain the sharp practices that exist with those concession loans. So going forward, because the conversation we're trying to sustain here is that we cannot always complain about the problem or the challenge.
Okay.
We must be solution driven.
Yes, and so when we are the problem.
No, we're saying that, of course,
what if when we are the problem?
Yes, we're saying that, yes, the challenge may be there. But going forward, you learn from mistakes of other leaders. So how do we correct those mistakes that were made by previous leaders? So the conversation or the advocacy that is being sustained across the globe is that people should tie their development loan to their regime.
So
Okay?
if I'm taking it now and I have 4 years, by the time I'm
most
getting
of
out
those
of 4 years,
concession loan
I should have
be a
paid it.
loan that should be driven by 4-year term. So if you're going to go into a long-term development package, the clamor now is that do things that are within the regime. If you have a 4 years or 5 years term, borrow based on your term, and you're able to do whatever you need to do to sustain that. But that again has its own. What
about paying?
No, that's the point I'm trying to make.
I really want to hear you say the word pay and pay
and
in your
pay
term.
up within your term. So the point, the clamor is that do not go into a development project, even though that they are long-term focused beyond your regime. And that's the point that clamor is all about. So, but the way we are tweaked internationally, based on the conspiracy, they'll tell you these are the gestation period of this, they are long-term. So sign the loan for 20, 30, 4 years.
Those are Brentwood institutions.
Yeah, no, even including the resource-backed concession loan. They are long-term. And there are certain clauses that need to be reviewed over a period of time so that we don't mortgage the entire future of Africa.
Okay, let's quickly look at this part of this kind of loans. Africa has a whole lot of bauxite mines, from Ghana to Guinea to several other places. Not just bauxite, uranium. We have gold, diamond, and every of these places affect the environment one way or the other. Now, for this particular loans that are coming, can we not make the mistake Nigeria made with oil? Now we are seeing the same thing, like I'm saying, the West is clamoring and shouting that this particular loans is causing Africa to degrade the environment. Then I come to ask, when you were doing yours with oil and taking it for free, did you not remember the environment? So now, what lessons can we learn from the mistakes we've made before and say, okay, good, as we are getting this done, let's also protect the environment?
I think the general mistake when it talks about the environment is more of illegal mining sites, which to a very large extent are very degrading to the environment. So the government must look inward to find a way to arrange or to find a policy framework that can deal with those that are involved in illegal mining. On the other hand, when it comes to resource exploitation and exploration, there are certain benchmarks in terms of environmental impact assessment that those companies must make to protect the environment. So the regulators must find a way to respect the terms of reference and the terms of engagement for those who are involved in mineral resource exploitation in Africa to safeguard the environment. So, and when you talk about environmental sustainability and business sustainability, those ecosystem must be sustained so that you don't degrade the environment and pollute the ecosystem.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to say thank you very much to everyone that has been out there and watching and logging on and being part of this particular program. It's still SOUQ Pulse. I want to tell you, be the citizen he spoke about. Ask questions. If you can't get answers, seek those answers. Talk to the people that needs to be talked to. And make sure that nobody takes a loan and mortgage your future. And to our leaders, we have committed this to you. We don't serve you, you serve us. Make Africa great again. My name is Chuks, John-Rogers, and hey, see you tomorrow.